Okay, welcome my friends. It's about to get messy. The full unit roster for Khorne the Blood God just made landfall, and it was a pretty quick turnaround this time. It's been only 48 hours since Kislev was laid bare before us, but we'll be plunging into the realms of chaos for this particular video, taking a look at what the Hunter of Souls has to offer the people of the material plane. Something tells me there will be lots of red fluid and lots of skulls. Let's dive into it, and right off the bat, I can say there are some very interesting and surprising additions here, units that I totally did not expect to see on launch day or ever, and some noticeable absences that we will discuss in depth as well. So let's jump right in and take a look at the army list for Khorne. Naturally, we have Skarbrand the Exiled One, leading the forces of the Blood God as their only legendary lord on launch. 9 legendary lords on launch day, not counting the pre-order bonus, means 2 for Kislev, 2 for Cathay, 1 for each of the Chaos Gods, and Be'lakor the Dark Master likely as that 9th and final lord. Now, Skarbrand is the named Bloodthirster Lord in the Daemons of Chaos 8th edition army book, so it's no surprise to see him here, and he is described as a ludicrous force on the battlefield. The greatest melee lord this trilogy has ever seen. Over 600 weapon strength base, with the ability to increase that permanently for every kill he makes while dual-wielding Slaughter and Carnage, his twin axes. So, contrary to the tactics employed against most other melee beasts, like Grimgor or Tyrion, throwing chaff his way will not work, because you're just giving him steroid buffs that make his dueling prowess even more terrifying once your important units actually have to engage him. And at some point, they will have to engage him. You don't want to be doing that when he's up near 1,000 every time he hits. That will be a problem for any lord in the game. It doesn't matter what your stats are or how much bonus versus large you have. That'll be an issue. For the other Khornate lords, we have an Exalted Bloodthirster, the hardest hitting generic lord type in all of Mortal Empires. And if you're beginning to sense a pattern here, it means you're paying attention, because Khorne's army list from top to bottom will have many of the best melee units in their respective weight class, which makes sense for a roster utterly lacking in ranged options, cheap skirmish troops, fodder, and magic. Some of the most important elements on a Warhammer battlefield, Khorne will not have, so what they do have better hit pretty damn hard. The other lord option is a Heralds of Khorne, which can mount up on a Juggernaut or Blood Throne, and is making the noticeable jump from hero character in tabletop to lord status in Warhammer 3. More on him in a little bit. Let's quickly go through the rest of the roster, and then we can discuss the things that immediately jump off the page to me. So for heroes, we have a Mortal Cultist of Khorne. He's the bald guy we've seen in some of the press reveals so far, and he can ride a Chaos Steed, while alongside him we'll have a Bloodletter hero, a Blood Reaper, that can ride a Juggernaut or Blood Throne. For Khorne Infantry, Chaos Warriors will come in 3 variants, Sword and Shield, Dual Axes, and Halberd. We'll have Bloodletters of Khorne and Exalted Bloodletters of Khorne, which are pretty much the difference between regular Chaos Warriors and Chosen. Bloodletters will be your Chaos Warrior equivalent, and then Exalted Bloodletters will be your Chosen demonic equivalent, along the same lines of infantry. Khorne Cavalry and Chariots, Gorby's Chariot of Khorne, Bloodcrushers of Khorne, Skullcrushers of Khorne. Monsters and Beasts will be Warhounds, Furies, and Chaos Spawn. Those 3 will probably be present on every single roster, all 4 Chaos Gods. And then we have Fleshhounds of Khorne, which were shown off in one of the spotlights. Khornators, Dual Axes, and Khornators, great weapons. So we have 2 variants of Minotaurs. And then we have the Soul Grinder of Khorne. Awesome addition. Cover that in a minute. Bloodthirster as the final rare single entity monster. And then for Khorne Artillery and War Machines, Blood Shrine of Khorne and the Skull Cannon of Khorne. Like I said, a couple extremely exciting additions that came completely out of left field, and also some glaring omissions. The entire Daemons of Chaos army book for Khorne is present on day 1, barring a few named characters like CARNAGE and Uzul the Skulltaker, of course. So the demon side is incredibly well represented here, and if that theme holds true for the other Chaos God factions, we might very well get their entire 8th edition army book on launch day, which would be fantastic news. That's a pretty big surprise. That has never happened in the history of this trilogy. We have never had the entire army book for a particular faction. Of course, this time it'd be split across 4 different races, but it gives us a good indication of what we might expect to see. And the one unit that tops it all off is the Soul Grinder of Khorne. This shit is straight out of Doom Eternal, my dudes. This thing is hype for the hype god. I am in love. It is a terror-causing cyber demon with powerful projectiles that can fire while moving and charging into enemy ranks. It is highly resistant to physical and magical damage, and as a result, it's incredibly difficult to kill. On the tabletop, they could be marked by any of the 4 Chaos Gods, and were naturally equipped with a Harvester Cannon for shotgun blasting fools while they smashed up to bloody ruin with their iron claws. But they also had 4 upgrades to choose from, each closely tied to one of the 4 pillars of the Ruinous Pantheon. Long and short of it is, they could get a Plague Cannon of Nurgle, a Flamethrower of Tzeentch, Kryptonian Magic Missiles of Slaanesh, or a Demon Bone Claw for maximum melee carnage, just how the Blood God likes it. So if we're getting one for Khorne, and when you look at it, it very much does look like a Khornate demon, replete with that red skin, it would not be shocking at all to see the other 3 Chaos Gods unload their own special packages for Soul Grinders when the time comes. My mouth dropped open when I saw that revealed. When I saw that unit show up on my screen, just about pooped my pants. Thought for sure it would be marked for DLC, or maybe even the cutting room floor. I did not expect it. Super stoked to see it on day one. And I can see why some people think it's 240k, too far future for fantasy. But honestly, for me, looking at it here in the flesh, I am happy they went with this design. I would have been totally cool with them changing it up a bit, making it a bit more steampunk, like Storm Fiends and Vermintide 2. But it just looks too damn awesome, man. And it kind of emphasizes the whole otherworldly timelessness of the Realms of Chaos. That anyone or anything from any time period could come screaming out of the void, and people will just poop their pants when they see it. I can't hate it. It's too dope looking. It's too awesome. And if you guys noticed so far, this roster is extremely expensive and top heavy. There is almost no chaff to speak of whatsoever. No Marauder Horsemen for skirmishing, no Marauder Infantry, no Cultists, no Meat Shields. Bloodletters are your lowest tier infantry, and they are mid-tier at worst. They're going to be well past 700 gold, probably closer to War Dancers than to Eternal Guard in terms of pricing. It is a massive departure from a unit roster perspective because so many things that make other factions good just aren't going to be present here. So their melee stats will need to be off the charts, off the chain Rackazoni, for them to compete purely from the standpoint of cost efficiency. Now, to that point about not having Marauders as cannon fodder, having a cultist hero without an army of cultists to lead is a bit strange. But those are hardly the only mortals that are missing, and for those of you with eagle eyes, you might already be freaking out a little bit. Chosen and Chaos Knights, 2 units that I thought would be automatic inclusions for every single Chaos faction, are not present in the Khorne roster either. Kinda blew my mind on that one. It feels like those could have been some of the easier additions to mold into a Khornate theme. But I'll leave that with the caveat that their absence might mean CA has something extra special planned for them. Sure, they could have just recolored the armor, given them some extra special crest on the helmet and called it a day, but I think we're all in agreement that the Mark Chosen and Chaos Knights of each god should look and play in a special manner, not just be a simple recolor. That is the main attraction of these monogod factions. If they're just going to be recolors and rehashes of the same roster 4 times over, there's no point in doing it. But if you're going to take the extra time to give them special love and attention, could end up being pretty sweet. That's what we're here for. I think there's multiple ways to handle this obvious gap going forward. They could roll all these variants out as part of the Warriors of Chaos update. I imagine Archaon and Kolek and their factions will be getting some love in Game 3 as part of the Undivided update, so there may be some kind of special update to Horde mechanics that brings these types of units along for the ride as part of a free expansion. The downside to that being that in that case they might be more of a recolor rather than their own special thing. Or they could accentuate the differences between these units to the max and truly make them each their own special unit. Kind of like what we saw from Putrid Blight Kings and Wrathmongers and Myrmidesh Painbringers. I'm not saying that those would be necessarily the exact same units. Those are, after all, End Times and AOS units, but essentially they are Mark Chosen with their own special rules, models, and approaches to combat. And CA could emulate that and bring us something really fancy and flavorful, well beyond what you'd expect from a simple recolor. And because it's all mortals that are missing here, with many suspecting Volky the Bloody to be the first Warriors of Chaos Lord for Khorne, having Chaos Knights, Chosen, and Marauders to help flesh out her Lord pack would certainly help. Now obviously, those can't be the only units in the DLC. There needs to be some real headlining troop choices and monsters as well. People will not be okay with being resold, recolored, and rehashed Chosen and Chaos Knights 4 separate times if that is indeed what they are, just recolors. But if they all have unique names, unique models, unique special rules, unique abilities, and visual flair, it's a different ballgame. You call names and you ain't just rapping, right? There's a lot that could be done here, and that is what is exciting if they really plunge in and accentuate those differences in a mono-god capacity. And it also might explain why CA initially said they were working on fixing Chaos Steed sizes in the Q&A, and then deleted that comment later. Not that Marked Chaos Knights won't come with newly reworked and resized steeds. That's pretty much you would think, at this point, that would be a guarantee once Chaos Knights come that the steeds will also be resized. We no longer want to deal with the ponies of the apocalypse, but that change isn't happening right away because Chaos Knights aren't in yet. So they just kind of felt like, okay, why are we going to put that in the Q&A if Chaos Knights aren't in the game on launch? It'll give people the wrong impression. So that might be why they did that. It seems like CA wants to emphasize the demonic roster for launch day and kind of keep the mortals on the back burner for now. In fact, that justification comes through in the blog post itself. And I quote, "Khorne has few non-demon followers in his armies. Whether that makes them cattle or commanders is entirely up to you." Now personally, I don't agree with that line from a lore perspective. Khorne is actually the most actively venerated of the 4 Chaos Gods in the north, and in a bog standard Chaos invasion, there'd typically be more Khorne-aligned mortals than there would be demons, simply because it's more difficult to sustain a massive amount of Bloodthirsters and Bloodletters and other demons on the material plane. Certainly there have been some demonic invasions numbering untold thousands, but I'd say those are more the exception than the rule. I do wonder though, if that's implying that CA will be taking different approaches in terms of the overall design for each Chaos faction. I mean, clearly, they will play very differently from each other, just because of their own inherent strengths and weaknesses and approach to warfare, but I'm wondering if perhaps the smaller amount of mortals in Khorne's army on launch will be offset by a faction like Tzeentch or Slaanesh, who are known for utilizing many cultists and mortal followers in their armies. That might be an interesting way to differentiate them, so we might get more of a Warriors of Chaos focus for some of the other Chaos Gods. Hard to know right now. So, as Joe Rogan would say, it's entirely possible that the framework we see here for Khorne won't hold true for the other Chaos Gods, that they will change the emphasis that each roster has, rather than sticking to any one blueprint for all 4. Still, it all remains to be seen. I think we'll have a much clearer picture once the second Chaos God is revealed. Now, the other set of conspicuous missing units that many of us expected to see immediately fall into the Lord category. Chaos Lords of Khorne and Demon Princes of Khorne specifically. And if you're anything like me, seeing the different models and different approaches to combat the Demon Princes and Marked Chaos Lords would have for each god will be a major highlight of this capstone game. Normally, I'd say, okay, they're not on the roster, they're probably going to be worked in as DLC. Maybe even alongside Volky the Bloody when she drops, considering she's essentially a demon princess and the Khornate Warriors of Chaos representative, it kind of makes sense that they would be molded in together. They'd be a fantastic set of headlining lords alongside the other missing units we've discussed already, and a Slaughter Brute as the main centerpiece monster to bring it all together. But we're kind of up in the air here, because we've had numerous hints about the corrupting influence of Chaos already. We saw it with the random Boyar falling to Khorne in the Kislev cinematic, and it's clear as day in the tagline for Warhammer 3, "Conquer your demons," which implies an internal struggle, as well as the more obvious implication of destroying the demonic invasions in Kislev and Far Cathay. So there might be more planned with Demon Princes than we've seen so far, in which case, just like some of the mortals in that free LC update to Warriors of Chaos scenario I discussed earlier, CA wouldn't want to reveal them on the roster yet, because they might have something bigger planned. And if Creative Assembly were to tackle Demon Princes in the same manner the Games Workshop did on the tabletop, building homebrew stuff, choosing their marks, their upgrades, their specialities, perhaps even taking a regular lord and marching down the path to ascension, to demonhood, that would be an incredibly special feature they wouldn't want to talk about yet. Now, I'm not the first person to come up with that idea. People have discussed that possibility on forums and Reddit before, and it makes sense because it's a major part of the lore. It's why people talk about it so much, because it's the ultimate gift from the Chaos Gods, the final stretch in a long race towards immortality. It's what all Chaos Lords aspire to become. So yeah, a feature like that would be a major and exciting departure for the series, and it would be one that plays really well into the hands of pre-established lore. I don't think people should necessarily get their hopes up too much for that, but I can't help but feel like there's a clear-cut theme with all these missing immortal units, and the puzzle pieces just kind of fit. The words Demon Prince were in the cinematic announcement. We've seen this theme rear its head multiple times, and even the tagline for the game itself talks about conquering your inner demons. So there might be something there. We'll have to wait and see. Couple other notes to add. I'm confused why they showed a Juggernaut pulling a chariot in the Gorby's chariot section of the unit roster. From what we can tell, there is no mount option or unit that combines Juggernauts and chariots. And Gorbeasts are not Juggernauts, although they do perform a similar role and I guess look a little similar. They're big, scary, four-legged monsters, I guess. But yeah, Gorbeasts are more like gorillas. Juggernauts are more like mechanical demon bull rhinos from hell. So, kind of weird. That unit doesn't exist in the concept art. I don't think that thing actually exists in the roster, so don't know why they're showing it. The units we do know are getting Juggernauts are, of course, the Herald of Khorne, the Blood Reaper, Bloodcrushers, and Skullcrushers, which I am incredibly excited to get my hands on. I think a doom stack of those bad boys will be super rewarding, thematic, and entertaining to play with. You guys know I love my heavy cav. Might be one of the first things I try and do in campaign. And speaking of Heralds, the up jump for the Herald of Khorne from hero to lord status is quite interesting. He's been promoted. I personally think there's a bit too much overlap between them and Blood Reapers, both being special bloodletters that can mount Juggernauts and Blood Thrones. Might have been a little bit more interesting to see a Blood Speaker, kind of like a Cornate Warrior Priest, take a hero slot instead, but we'll see. I absolutely adore the model of the Herald, and armored bloodletter characters in general just look super awesome and get me even more excited for Skulltaker when he inevitably comes. And I love the Khorne Minotaurs. I love the models, I love what they represent in terms of expanding the Beastmen and their scope even further, and in my mind, it virtually guarantees we see units like Slongors and Zongors, which were always kind of a pipe dream in my eyes, but with marked Gors being much more important to the tabletop and source material than marked Minotaurs ever were, the fact that we're getting Khornators means we will almost certainly be seeing Beastie Boys flying around on Discs of Tzeentch, firing arcane bolts of energy, and also see their cousins speeding along the ground with crabs on their hands and crabs in their junk. It is a good time, my dudes, to be a Beastmen fan. I tell you what, brother, I'm excited for the Cloven Ones. But yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with this roster reveal. It is not what I was expecting, but I think it's a really solid foundation. And the fact that we're getting literally every single Cornate Demon is a super good sign for Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle as well. The mortal side is a lot more sparse right now. I can see why some people will be disappointed with that. I would have loved to see Chaos Knights and Chosen on day one. Obviously, I wanted to see them. I think we can all rage together if they aren't added relatively quickly and if they aren't done justice. But I am excited to see what Creative Assembly does with them, and if they take some extra steps to make them truly unique and special, then it might be a beautiful marriage. And we're going to be looking at some pretty incredible rosters when that happens. So, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, and remember, blood for the Blood God, skulls for his throne.